The United States' motivation to find infamous trafficker Rafael Caro Quintero was never in doubt, hence the $20 million reward for information leading to his capture. But there was less certainty about Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's commitment, who had previously stated his disinterest in pursuing traffickers. Yet, 3 days after López Obrador and U.S. President Joe Biden met in the White House, the U.S. Narcotics Enforcement Administration's most sought target, the guy accused of eliminating a DEA agent more than 3 decades earlier, was in Mexican custody. As Mexican Marines closed in deep in the mountains of his native state of Sinaloa, a bloodhound roused him from the bushes. 14 Mexican Marines were done and dusted, yet another was injured when a naval Blackhawk helicopter crashed during the mission. The Navy said that it appeared to be an accident, and the cause is being investigated. So, let's dive into today's video, where we discuss how Rafael Caro Quintero was captured. But before we begin, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. According to a statement issued by Mexico's Attorney General's office late Friday, Caro Quintero was arrested for extradition to the United States and would be imprisoned at the maximum security Altiplano jail, some 50 miles west of Mexico City. DEA Administrator Ann Milgram praised the capture of a guy reviled by the U.S. officials for executing DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena in 1985. Our outstanding DEA team in Mexico worked in collaboration with Mexican authorities to capture and arrest Rafael Caro Quintero, she said in a late Friday message to the agency. Today's arrest is the culmination of years of your blood, sweat, and tears, she said. Cooperation between the DEA and Mexico's Marines had resulted in some of the most high-profile arrests in previous administrations, but not under López Obrador, according to security analyst David Salcedo. It appears to me that in the private talks between President Joe Biden and Andrés Manuel, they undoubtedly decided to resume the extradition of high-profile traffickers, which had been suspended. Salcedo stated, domestic pressure is mounting on both presidents to do more to combat narcotic dealers. Narcos are being apprehended again, and I believe that plainly it was what was needed, Salcedo said of Caro Quintero's arrest. According to Samuel Gonzalez, who founded the Organized Crime Office in Mexico's Attorney General's office, is now a security analyst, and the capture may not have had a significant impact on the map of organized crime in Mexico because Caro Quintero was not as powerful as he was decades ago, and it might even generate more violence in territories such as Sonora, which borders the United States. However, he stated that the arrest offers evidence that there is no protection of capos by López Obrador's administration. Gonzalez believes that Caro Quintero has long been a thorn in the bilateral relationship, but that the capture was, without a doubt, the result of recent negotiations in Washington. The Americans never gave up on getting him arrested, Gonzalez stated. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ken Salazar both expressed gratitude for Mexico's detention of a man accused of eliminating Camarena, a case that drove U.S.-Mexico ties to, well, a low point. This victory demonstrates Mexico's willingness to bring to justice someone who terrified and destabilized Mexico during his time in the Guadalajara cartel, and is implicated in the kidnapping and death of DEA agent Kiki Camarena, Salazar said in late Friday in a statement. Garland stated that the United States would seek his prompt extradition. My expectation is that the capture of Caro Quintero will relieve a lot of tensions between the DEA and Mexico, said Mike Vigil, the former DEA Chief of International Operations. The operation was led by Mexico's Navy and Attorney General's office in the highlands straddling the border between Sinaloa and Chihuahua states, many kilometers from any paved road. With the help of Max, they discovered Caro Quintero hidden in undergrowth in San Simón, Sinaloa. According to López Obrador, the helicopter that crashed into the seaside city of Los Mochis was aiding the operation against Caro Quintero. Officials from the United States sent their sympathies to the fallen troops. Caro Quintero was born in Badiraguato, Sinaloa, the same township as former Sinaloa cartel boss Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. Caro Quintero was a founding member of the Guadalajara cartel and, according to the DEA, was a major supplier of illegal substances to the United States in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. Caro Quintero had blamed Camarena for a 1984 raid on a massive marijuana plantation. Camarena was kidnapped in Guadalajara the next year, allegedly on orders from Caro Quintero. A month later, his tortured body was discovered. Caro Quintero was apprehended in Costa Rica in 1985 and was serving a 40-year term in Mexico before his conviction was reversed in 2013. The Supreme Court upheld the punishment, but it was too late. Caro Quintero had already been whisked away in a waiting car. In 2018, Caro Quintero was added to the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, with a $20 million reward for his capture. Previously, López Obrador appeared hesitant about his case. Last year, the president declared that the judicial appeal that resulted in Caro Quintero's release was legitimate, claiming that no verdict had been rendered against the trafficker after 27 years in prison. López Obrador also cited a subsequent warrant for his rearrest and as evidence of U.S. coercion. Once he got out, they had to seek for him again since the U.S. insisted he not be released. But technically, the appeal was correct, López Obrador explained. The president was only noting that it was a legal anomaly that the judge had not given a decision on Mr. Caro Quintero after 27 years, but he wasn't supporting his release. Presidential spokesperson Jez Ramirez stated at the time, Anabel Hernandez, a Mexican reporter, interviewed the fugitive Caro Quintero twice in the mountains of northern Mexico, without revealing the location. In those interviews, Caro Quintero stated that he was no longer active in the narcotic trade. Crime analysis by Insight. The arrest of Rafael Caro Quintero comes only days after U.S. President Joe Biden met with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador at the White House. This was no coincidence, according to several researchers. According to David Saucedo, a top security analyst, the two presidents have reached an accord. They very certainly agreed to resume turning over high-profile traffickers, which had been suspended. If confirmed, this would mean a continuation of the contentious kingpin approach. Both the United States and Mexico have historically prioritized executing or apprehending and extraditing major narcotics dealers. However, there's been little to no improvement in security as a result. Former Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto claimed at the beginning of his administration in 2012 that he had compiled a list of 122 high-priority targets for arrest. After 6 years, 110 of them have been arrested or slain. However, homicides had climbed by 14% through the exact same time period. According to a study conducted by the Modern War Institute at West Point, the continuous focus on removing the leaders of Mexican factions has contributed to the multi-headed, increasingly local tangle of confrontations. When a prominent crime boss is removed, the gang often fragments and becomes vulnerable to interconnected inter-gang fights. Smaller criminal organizations will then struggle bloodily for smaller regions or less profitable criminal economies. Rafael Caro Quintero took use of the circumstance. The Sinaloa cartel dominated the Mexican state of Sonora prior to the capture and extradition of Joaquin Guzman Loera, aka El Chapo. The departure of Mexico's most prominent narco allowed Caro Quintero's Caborca cartel to begin competing with the Sinaloa cartel for sections of criminal economies near the U.S. border. The capture of Rafael Caro Quintero satisfies a long-standing desire for the U.S. authorities. This arrest puts some finality into Camarena's death, which remains one of the most prominent incidents in the United States' war on narcotics. However, there should be no misgivings regarding its actual influence. Caro Quintero was no longer the powerful person who established the Guadalajara cartel. His new Caborca cartel wielded considerable power in Sonora, but never came near to breaking out nationally or seriously challenging the Sinaloa cartel interest. This was a mostly cosmetic arrest, according to Falco Ernst, senior Mexico analyst for International Crisis Group. Instead of demonstrating creative anti-narcotic strategies, Mexico demonstrated a return to the failed kingpin strategy, rather than comprehensive solutions. It appeared to support the Mexican federal government's operational inclinations, Ernst remarked on Twitter, seized in the bush. So how did officials finally apprehend Caro Quintero? Well, depending on who you ask. Ramirez stated that the information on Caro Quintero's whereabouts came from a neighbor who complained about a loud party in the early hours of June 15th in the village where he was hiding, Rear Adam. Jose Orozco, a spokesman for Mexico's Navy, said Marines had been tracking him for a few months, and that the Navy's intelligence branch had discovered his position. Another narrative was supplied by a former U.S. official with knowledge of the operation. According to the former official, the most recent version of the Caro Quintero probe began at least 8 months ago, and involves U.S. anti-narcotic agents providing intelligence and other help to seasoned Mexican Marines Special Forces. According to the former U.S. source, senior military Mexican officers approved off the capture after López Obrador returned from a meeting with President Biden in Washington on July 12th. He claimed that DEA agents were watching the operation unfold but were not personally present when the capo was apprehended. Mexican officials disputed that the detention was related to the 3-day bilateral meeting. Caro Quintero tried to hide in some bush as the Marine arrived, according to the various versions of the story. Max, a 6-year-old bloodhound, sniffed him out. On Friday afternoon, the news broke in Mexico. Immediately, a speculation focused on his possible extradition to the United States, an unpredictable process that appears to take weeks or months. A champagne toast was arranged at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. Officials began calculating how much of the $20 million bounty to distribute, and to whom. Former and present members of the RCQ task force exchanged congratulatory text messages in droves. The founder of the unit photographed the tequila he was sipping and forwarded it to a former colleague. The men examined recently published photos of Caro Quintero. He looked revitalized and like a spring chicken with jet black hair, stated the task force's founder. More news broke before the champagne could be opened at the U.S. Embassy. In Sinaloa, one of the helicopters transporting Mexican Marines participated in the attack crashed, eliminating 14 military men. The tragedy is still being investigated, but officials believe that the craft ran out of fuel. The champagne had been stored at the U.S. Embassy. López Obrador entered the podium at his daily news conference a few days later. He stated that the DEA played no direct part in this capture. Messages were exchanged between some of the former DEA agents, and they weren't surprised when López Obrador refused to give them credit. But it was nonetheless an unusual ending to their 9-year journey. "We all know how we got him," stated one former agent. "What's important is that he spends the rest of his life in prison." So this was all about how Rafael Caro Quintero was captured. What do you guys think about the story of Rafael Caro Quintero? Let us know in the comment section below. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a big thumbs up and press the bell icon to get the latest updates on our videos. We'll see you guys in the next one.